Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the VR Download, a weekly show recorded live in the Upload Virtual Studios, where we bring you the latest news, reviews, comments, and interviews from the VR industry. My name is Kyle, Upload Manager, Operations Manager at Upload. I know my title. I swear I do.
Sorry, he's new
Let's meet
here.
the rest of today's panel. Starting over here to the right, David.
Put your hand down.
I'm sorry.
David.
I thought it was pointing at me.
Hi, I'm David, Senior Editor at Upload VR, also known as Ian's Nemesis.
Can't beat me a pistol whip, though.
Yeah, I don't want to.
Yeah, I know. Hi, this is Ian Hamilton.
And over here, our guest this week. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Mike.
My name's Mike Daly. I work at Insomniac Games, and I was the lead designer on Stormland.
All right. Well, thanks for being here with us this week. Okay, so this is a special Wednesday episode. We've moved the normal weekly show to Wednesday to make room for a special show tomorrow after a event and announcement. And so let's go ahead and get into this week's news stories. And the very first news story that we have this week is Half-Life VR. Half-Life, what is it called? Half-Life Alyx?
Half-Life Alyx, yeah.
Ian, why don't you start us off here and talk about this?
Yeah, so we're not going to talk about it for too long since we've got the special episode tomorrow, but we've got a story on uploadvr.com right now that will familiarize yourself with Alyx. I've actually not played the Half-Life games to their completion, all of them. I've played a couple of them. And that story sums the Half-Life games to their completion. Alyx is a non-playable character in the classic Half-Life games, and we believe you may get to embody this character. We're not sure. We're going to find out everything as soon as Valve takes off reveals the curtain and tells us everything about this game. We've also got a story that tracks. Obviously, the commentary has been off the charts here about this game because people wanted Half-Life 3. This is obviously not called Half-Life 3. It's called Half-Life Alyx. And that indicates to the audience out there that this is a little bit different than what everyone wanted or expected. And the thing that's important to remember is Valve has been working on VR for many, many, many years. Their dedication and interest in it is probably the only one that rivals Facebook's interest in VR. And there's a long path here of building towards a flagship AAA VR game, and that's our expectations for what Half-Life Alyx represents, is a game design team that's been working for many years in.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's been the better part of a decade. It's been almost 8 years. Yeah.
But so Valve is also the thing that's confusing to people, though, is that not everyone realizes Valve has very serious hardware ambitions for VR too. The HTC Vive, when it debuted, in 2015, I think, was built by HTC and powered by SteamVR's tracking technology. So powered by technology developed at Valve is what made all of the magic of the HTC Vive, the ability to have hand controllers, the ability to walk around a full room. That's all Valve's technology. And that was more or less 4 years ago. So they've been building a whole new hardware platform, and that's the Valve Index that started shipping earlier this year. But of course, they've also got SteamVR. So SteamVR is compatible with practically all PC VR headsets. And then they also have their own hardware platform on top of that has a few different interactions. You can grasp things a little bit more realistically with the Index controllers.
Yeah, so point being, if you're upset that this is not Half-Life 3 and it's a VR exclusive game, shut up, nerd.
Okay, boomer. Right?
Okay, boomer. Yeah.
Man. Exactly. Wow. So there is some chatter, though, on the interwebs about this not being a pancake game, a screener game. David, what are your personal thoughts other than just calling people nerds?
I mean, that's pretty much it, right? I mean,
That's
if you're honestly upset about this, then, I mean, are you the type of person that won't buy the next Xbox to play the new Halo game? Are you the type of person that won't buy the PS5 to play, whatever new Sony games there are? Like it's such a weird concept, and it seems very hyper specific to people being frustrated with VR. And I think it's because VR has a reputation of not being good enough, of being too expensive, but that's changed now. I mean, you can get a VR ready PC and a PC VR headset for around the price of how much a console is at launch. That $500-600, you can be in the ecosystem with the top tier VR content immediately. And if you want to take a slower approach, you could get a Quest for $400, or it may be cheaper if you buy one used, and then you can get a PC later on once Half-Life Alyx comes out. I mean, also it's stupid to me because if the people that would play Half-Life 3 probably already have a gaming PC. So just $200 for a headset, like that's not that much. You pay more than that for some like Lucid Sound Turtle Beach headphones. Like it's really not. It's not like what it used to be. And so I think people just want to be upset because it's not exactly what they wanted. And that's just gamer culture. People get mad because they don't get exactly what they wanted. And you
So
can't dictate what a developer does based on your decade-long dreams of playing a game with the number 3 at the end. Like, this is a new Half-Life game. You get excited. It's stupid.
going off of that, you make a good point of people already have the type of the target audience. Let's just say that the target
Yeah.
audience for this game already is possibly PC Master Race type of mentality.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're already ramped up and good to go. They just need to get this little accessory, this $2,000 computer. All they need to do is buy a $200 or $300 piece of hardware to go with it to be able to play this new game. People have done that in the past. They have purchased large pieces of accessories to be able to do the game that they want.
Yeah.
So this could be potentially the gateway for a lot of these folks to buy their first headset. Game.
I'm hoping so, and I think that's what Valve is hoping as well.
Yeah.
Because for Valve, especially, like similar to Oculus, the more people that get VR, that buy VR games on Steam, that's a win for Valve. They don't need them to buy an index.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think, Mike?
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff going on there that I think is pretty interesting. So I guess for one thing is managing. It's tough to manage your expectations with anything Valve does, not just because there's all this like inertia to people's expectations about what they're working on, but they also really think outside the box, and they're not usually as constrained as developers to like sort of like traditional things. So if you think about Portal, which was definitely a high quality game, a game of the year contender, it didn't even come close to like the playtime and scope as a lot of games it was competing against. And that's just sort of one of many examples where Valve didn't feel like they needed to fit within the box of a 30-hour single player with a multiplayer mode game that everybody expects, because that's just what the market does these days. So for one thing, I would say don't be too confident in what to expect out of their VR game, because it's probably going to be something different and something unusual. It's not going to feel like Half-Life 3 for sure. The other side is, how as a developer do you manage the audience's expectations? And I wish I had like some good answers here or some good analysis, but I can say that it's like a pervasive problem throughout the industry. Like, the game developers have this double-edged sword where once the audience has expectations and knows you and knows your games, that is an excellent way of drawing people to your future games in your company. We all want and need that because it's super hard to get attention, especially if you're making a VR game. But at the same time, like, if you just direct 10 million gamers who are enthusiastic about a specific thing to something that's not that thing, that's naturally going to cause just a ton of friction, whether it's rational or not. I think that's the world that game developers have to live with and come up with some very smart and novel marketing messages that can sort of mitigate the negative feelings. This is very much a parallel, I think, of the Diablo mobile game announcement that came right before Diablo 4,
That's
where
a
everybody
great point.
was upset that this is not Diablo 4, table flip. You would hope that from that, people making games that they know are not the game that everybody is looking for would find some way to present it in a way that still sort of surprises people about the announcement.
And
But
then
I think with something
you've
as
even
heavy as Half-Life, there was no way to avoid it.
You've even partially got the flip side of that with Blizzard as well, with Overwatch 2, where people are upset it's not enough. They don't think it's enough of a sequel. It could have just been an expansion, or this is what the original should have been. And so, how do you even navigate that? If you're giving people what they want, but then it's just not exactly enough of what they want, it's the internet's crazy.
And one of the drawbacks of giving people exactly what they want is that over the course of sequels, that can cause your audience to shrink, because the people who go there for exactly what they want will be satisfied, and so there won't be as many complaints. But at the same time, a lot of other people might write the game off as I know exactly what that is. It's not enough to really pull me in. And a lot of the new gamers that get pulled in aren't part of that really fired up group that complains about how different and whether things are different. So, this is probably not the most favorable analogy to make, but when the Wii came out, gamers did not like it, but it drew a ton of new people in because it was different, and those were not the people that complained really.
It's a good point. Yeah.
That's excellent.
The Wii started off very lukewarm and ended up being a monster. I don't think I think a lot of us were really surprised at where the audience came from. So I'm going to take a look over here at the comments. I'm going to just switch seats here. Excuse me. All right. So it looks like Valve, let's see, here's Andrew King in the chat here. Valve doing this is like Apple removing the headphone jack. If they can show this can work, other large game publishers might be willing to release VR first titles. Curious, comparing it to Apple removing the headphone jack. I mean,
it's a really interesting analogy.
I can see where that's coming from. Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's hard to come up with a great analogy because VR is a new medium.
The thing I love about that analogy was I actually went to the Samsung press event where they announced their next phone after Apple did that removal, and they stood on stage and they're like, "Oh, and it also has a headphone jack." But that's the phone that exploded. That's the phone that and they're so proud that they have a headphone jack, and then a month later, this thing is recalled worldwide.
I mean, the flip side of that too is back whenever Xbox One, they said, "Oh yeah, you can't share games or no used games because each disc will be identified and locked to that console." And then Sony released a video how to share games using the PS4, and it's a video of Shuhei Yoshida handing a game to another person, and then he puts it in his PS4, and that's the end of the video. It was a great response. So I mean, if you're doing something too bold, too risky, then you run the risk of that.
So
what's this greaser guy over here?
Studio, it's amazing.
We have a new person here. Hey, Harry, how are you, sir?
I'm good.
That's not Harry. That's John Travolta.
How's everyone going? Yeah, I got the leather jacket. I didn't really have time to mess around with the avatar, so we got the leather jacket because I was too busy trying to reinstall USB 3.0 drivers. But we're here. We made it.
All right. Well, cool, Harry. Good.
Well, everyone meet Harry. He's the newest member of Upload. He is in Australia, one of our staff writers.
I'm the Australian correspondent.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
Good stuff.
Yes.
What time is it where you are?
About 5 o'clock in the morning.
Thank you for getting up.
The sun is not up, but that's okay. The main part is the USB 3.0 drivers are working again. Who knows why they keep stopping? But anyway.
So, Harry, you're plugged in with a Quest using Link. Is that correct?
Correct. I am using Oculus Link, which is so far very good when it works. And I think most of the problems have been with my computer and my USB drivers being weird. But
Well, good. Well, hold on to that, because when we
yeah.
get
It's
down
not
to our
you, it's
hot
me.
lots to
topics this
say.
week,
Lots to say.
we can talk all about it. Great. All right. Well, let's move on to the next piece of news.
Well, real quick though, reminder: tomorrow here on our YouTube channel, we're doing another episode of the VR Download just about Half-Life VR. So after that reveal is done, after Valve tells us hopefully more than just the title, we will have a whole episode dedicated to talking about Half-Life Alex. So tune in tomorrow at like 11-ish.
And we'll talk all about Gaben with a handful of cheeseburgers, right?
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on. The Friday after American Thanksgiving is typically known as Black Friday. And so
Are
Black
there more
Friday
than-
is...
Are there other Thanksgivings? Am I?
Other countries might have Thanksgivings other than
Oh, okay.
America.
Do they?
Okay.
I'm not sure.
No, Mike's shaking his head. I trust Mike more
Yeah.
than Kyle. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, somebody correct me on it. Put it in the comments. We'll read it.
It's like saying after the American Civil War.
Okay. Well, there were civil wars in other countries. So,
Yeah.
all right.
Not American Civil Wars.
Someone said
Yeah.
Canada's is in October, so Canada do have one. So there you go.
Oh, Canada
Well,
has
never
one.
mind.
There you go. There you go.
So, shut up.
Why'd you make fun of him, Ian? Why'd you make fun of him? That wasn't nice.
Getting back to the news, Black Friday, whatever it may be after whatever holiday you choose. Black Friday is typically a really big holiday event where people go out and shop and stand in crazy lines. But lately, things have kind of gone more online. So Black Friday deals are out here. And since, David, you are so well versed, why don't you tell us all about the Black Friday deals that we are going to discuss today?
Yeah, so Black Friday, it's usually begins like Wednesday night, basically now these days. It's not really Friday anymore, but it's a big giant shopping palooza. And then Cyber Monday is the following Monday, and it's usually a lot of online deals. So far, we know of some pretty good ones. Most notably, Sony has some amazing deals. If you don't have a PSVR, for $200, you can get a PSVR headset, the PS4 camera that it requires it to function, and 5 VR games. Resident Evil, you get Skyrim, you get Astrobot, you get PSVR Worlds, and you get a 5th one that I can't remember. But it's an amazing package.
Those
and
four
that's,
are enough. Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
$200 for all that. $200. That's incredible. And then if you don't have a PS4, well, I got news for you. $200, you can get a 1 terabyte PS4 along with 5, or not, maybe it's 3 non-VR games. I think it's like God of War, and is Spider-Man one of them? I don't know if it is. I can't remember.
I hope so.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Not even Insomniac knows. Who knows?
Not even
The deals
who
are
knows?
crazy.
Who knows?
The deals are crazy, but you get a terabyte PS4 and 3 of the best exclusives for $200. You can get a PSVR headset and 5 of the best PSVR games for $200. $400 gets you into like the largest VR ecosystem on the planet right now.
You
That's
sound like a
that's crazy.
car salesman, but you're like
I'm just
Bruce
saying.
Sony. You're like guys,
It's bananas.
PSVR, get in quick. This Black Friday, PS4.
And then if you
Get
don't
him on
want
top.
that, the Oculus Rift S will be $350, so $50 off. You can find other headsets discounted. Usually the Samsung Odyssey and other Windows headsets are super cheap, and those come with controllers too. The Quest isn't discounted, which I found interesting. It must be selling well enough they didn't feel the need to. Instead, you get all 3 episodes of Vader Immortal packaged with it, so that saves you $30,
That's pretty
I guess, if you wanted to play that anyway.
Yeah.
There's some other deals that we have in our roundup post on uploadvr.com that you can check out.
Oculus Go is $50 off, but we don't really
Oh,
talk
yeah.
about Oculus Go anymore, do we?
Neither does Oculus, so no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oof.
Well, the Go is still a very good entry level media viewing, give it to grandma because she wants to be able to sit on
Give
the
it to
beach
grandma.
type of
It
hardware.
is. It's.
I mean, it still has
I
a place.
like it because it is so easy to demo VR to old people specifically. The Quest is great because you can move around, but not everyone would want to or is capable of doing so without tripping over something. So, I kind of like that the Go is, you just put it on. Here, look at this beach. It's really cool, right? You feel like you're in, Puerto Rico. There you go.
All right. So the thing that kills me about the Go is you can't lean.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
I see videos of kids, old people, everyone that puts on Go doing the leaning thing, and that's not reflected in VR. That does not work.
I'll be right
And
back.
that's uncomfortable. I can't recommend it for that reason. So despite everything you're saying, that like, yeah, it's a good media consumption device, just don't forget that you can't lean. It's so
And
they,
I
I don't know.
think in my experience too, on to that point, when I give people the Quest who haven't ever used VR, like, because they can do all that, it becomes so much more kind of shocking or amazing to them, because then they kind of put it on and it's like everything they think they can do, they can do. Like they start walking around, they start leaning, they've got the full kind of sixed off like experience. There's nothing missing, right? I feel like that's kind of important in that, I've given it to people and they've just kind of been like, wow, this is actually as good as I thought it was, or this is way better than I thought it was, because they can do everything, because they are leaning and doing all that kind of stuff.
So I'm really curious, Mike, as a developer, do you see any value in the Go?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, I was just curious if you could. Do you think that it's valuable, the Go? Do you see value in it as a developer who's making content for VR headsets? Is the Go even on your radar? Do you see value in it, or should we just chuck it off into the clearance racks and move on?
Yeah. So for me, I've been working on VR for like 5 years, but it's always been in like the high end market, because that's where we saw like the opportunity. And in that regard, Go was not a good fit for Insomniac, because our specialty is high end assets and our proprietary engine that is targeting a really high spec. So it's not really something I would target. But I mean, it's very difficult to write off any given platform, mainly because like the value of investing in it is, it's like the stock market. The less other people are interested in developing for it, there's like this counterbalancing factor. So if you can produce something like pretty cheap, there's a lot of Goes out there, and if it's innovative, it might get picked up and be profitable. That being said, I do think that probably the better like long-term bet, unless you think you can turn around Go software very quickly, would be to target the Quest instead. I think that market is growing while the Go market is probably going to stay steady.
And one thing that I've seen happen a little bit is developers will target Go first as kind of like their test bed, and then add on Sixth Off and improve the game and try to get it on Quest after that. And because the Go is very easy to release a game on, it's a much lower barrier as opposed to the Quest, where there's a lot of Rift games that don't even get approved for Quest, even if they function, just because Oculus says so. I mean, no one really knows. So yeah,
I feel like I should say that Go is probably the last 3DOF headset we'll ever see. I think that's a dead technology.
tell that to Pico.
I have a
They're
feeling
probably
we're going to
working
see
on
a
one.
big
What?
flood.
I said tell that to Pico. They're probably working on one.
There you go. Yeah, there's going to be a big flood of knockoffs at some point next year.
That's true.
I don't know why. I
Walmart has plenty already. Yeah.
Well, right. Okay, so there you go. But is
the
is that good?
$25 3DOF?
Yeah.
How much was that PC? That Windows PC that was $3, or the Windows headset?
Oh, I think that was like $40, and it had like terrible. It was just bad. I don't want to talk about it.
Well, we'll
VR
see. Who
Tech
knows?
was
Maybe
the
the
brand.
Go is going, gone. Who knows?
Ooh.
Just quickly,
Ooh.
Yeah.
just quickly, Mike. I think our producer has asked if you could reconnect because your lip sync is not working on your avatar. So if you could just exit and reconnect, see if that
Hi.
fixes things up. Just
I'll see you
FYI.
guys in a minute.
All right.
See you
See you in a
in a
minute. So is that everything for Black Friday? Is that
As of
good
now,
stuff?
I'm
Is there
hoping we'll
more?
find out some more deals. And the other good thing too, if you have a PC VR headset or want to get one soon, Viveport Infinity is only $60 for the entire year, which is an incredible deal. Viveport is actually very good now, and they have some amazing games on there. And if you pay that $60 fee, you can download as much as you want off of Viveport for free. Like, it's a subscription, but it's not streaming. You download the game and you keep it as long as you're subscribed. And they have like Arizona Sunshine. They've got Five Nights at Freddy's. They've got Fisherman's Tale. They've got a lot of great VR games. So if you have a PC headset, whether it be a Vive headset, a Rift, a Windows headset, all those are supported on Viveport. So highly recommend checking that deal out.
Good stuff. Hey, Harry, is there any comments here from our live viewers?
Most people at the moment are. I did see one earlier asking about the Black Friday deals, whether they're in Europe at all, or if I think it was in relation to. Can't remember if it was the Rift or something else, but whether there's anything in Europe. Does any of this apply to Europe? Do we know that, or is it just America? I'm presuming it's just America.
I don't know. The
I'm
ones on
presuming it would be just
Amazon, I
America.
assume will.
Maybe?
Yeah, I don't know.
Who knows? Not sure. It's tough.
I think I should mention that like sometimes retailers save limited time deals just for that period, so that it's possible you might find even better deals during that period of like November 28th to December 2nd.
Like, and Steam usually has a sale, right? And I think Oculus had a sale on Home last year, so there will be some game deals for sure.
And
I would love
even
to
if
see a
they don't
price
get-
drop on Index. I think that there's potential there
That's
for
the
them
time.
to do a surprise, but I know I'm not saying that that's definite, but it's definitely a possibility, I think.
Maybe
I
a
think
the
price
hype train.
drop and a bundle.
Yeah, I think
That would be
Alex is going to
cool.
be bundled with it for sure. That they have to. Like, it would be stupid not to.
Good
Yeah.
stuff. Well, let's move on to the next piece of news here. We've got a release on Friday of a highly anticipated game, Aspire 1 VR Operative. Let's see here. Who wants to talk about that one? David?
I could start. Yeah, I'll
Okay.
probably be doing our review for it, and that's a game that we've been following for a very long time. We had it in our E3 VR showcase. I think it was, other than Lo-Fi and Pistol Whip, was probably the most anticipated out of our showcase. A lot of people were talking about Aspire. And fun fact about Aspire, that game was created because of us. Did you know that? We
What?
used to have a podcast called the Upload VR Games Cast, where me and Joe Durbin, rest in peace, he's not actually dead, but he's not at Upload anymore. We had a podcast where we
Dead to
talked
us.
about like our dream VR games, and we had some people on we were interviewing, and we kind of described like a Metal Gear Splinter Cell style VR game, and they heard the podcast and they started working on Aspire, and so
There you
that
go.
we inspired Aspire.
You
Get it?
Hey.
Oh, man.
Whoa.
Love
Yeah.
it.
Hey.
And so that game comes out on Friday finally after what feels like a billion delays. It's going to be on every platform though. It's launching on PSVR, Quest, PC VR headsets, and it's a really cool action stealth game, a lot like Splinter Cell and Metal Gear. You can climb pretty much any surface that's metal. You play as this android that can has a little visor that you can tap to see where enemies are. You can sneak up behind people and verbally say freeze into your mic, and it makes them put their hands up. There's a lot of sneaking in going on, and it's supposed to be about 6 hours long, so not super long, but there's a lot of replayability. So I'm looking forward to it. We've been looking forward to this one for a while.
And it's
David,
was gonna
that's the
say,
game that has
yeah.
the comfort mode, right? The really cool
Yes,
comfort mode
exactly.
that
Yeah,
Rec Room
was gonna
it's
did.
say,
called
yeah.
they call
Sorry,
it
Harry.
Control Theater. So it's a feature they've already rolled out to Killing Floor Incursion, which is another Tripwire interactive game. And in this mode, instead of just doing a vignette around your view, it actually creates this sort of like digitized screen so you're looking through like a window while you control your character. So it makes it sort of, instead of just dimming the field of view, it's more of a like canonical in-universe explanation for why your field of view is dimming, and it makes it much more playable if you can't move smoothly in VR, because
Yeah.
it's not a teleport game; it's a smooth game. So you have to be able to adapt to that sort of movement. And I have played it on a Quest. I played it back at E3. I want to say it was our game of the show at E3. And I played it on Quest, and I was really impressed. Visually, obviously, there's a massive downgrade, but the gameplay felt intact, which is the most important thing. So
It's nice
Yeah.
that it's launching at the same time too, especially on all platforms.
I
Like, I feel like we're
suspect
seeing
that's
more of
the
that
reason
too.
for all the delays. Yeah,
Yeah,
I imagine they
yeah.
wanted to hit all at the same time, and I know
Yeah,
certification for Sony is infamously tough to get through sometimes. So I think my gut tells me that's what was the cause of the delay. So
Yeah.
Good
People in the
stuff.
comments are very excited. They're all saying they're very excited. Someone's Christopher's saying it's Metal Gear Solid in VR. People are saying
without
looks epic.
the Kojima-ness. But
Yeah, the Kojima-ness, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No babies.
No.
As far as I know.
Yeah. No carrying parcels and babies while you're being stealthy. No, none of that.
That's a VR game right there. Boxes and babies. Let's do it.
Yeah, boxes and babies. That's
Well, now there's going to be a development team listening to this.
Yeah.
And start working
Exactly.
on it because...
Boxes and babies.
We did it again.
Coming 2022. Watch out, guys.
Oh boy. Over here, Ian, do you have anything to add about
just
Aspire?
that comfort mode? Yeah, that just sounds like my dream game. And yeah, the comfort modes I've got that. Tried that in Rec Room. They've got a version of that comfort mode in Rec Room, and it's a delight to do their like the what do they call it, stunt runner mode in Rec Room, where you run through levels, and then you've got this virtual screen, and you can see sort of a simulated space around you that keeps you grounded and feeling comfortable, and you can still reach and do all the different movement options to get around. And yeah, it feels amazing. I'm super sensitive to motion sickness in VR, and it's terrible when like you've got a game that you've been anticipating so much. It happened to me this week where there's a game I'm looking forward to so much, and then you're fiddling around with multiple. Like, I think what kills me the most is when you've got two movement options at the same time accessible to you. So you can use the stick to move around or do something else. And like I switch back and forth between the two of them and then find myself sick in 5 minutes. And that's brutal. So I really hope that comfort mode is a huge, huge help.
I'm going to say the exact opposite. Hopefully that you can turn it off, because I don't like that type of comfort mode. I am very, at first it would be I'd play.
Yeah, I agree with you for personally, but yeah, you can turn it all off. Yeah,
it's one of those things where people get used to walking around in VR. I mean, it used to be I'd have to take a 15-minute nap after I play an hour or so. Now I'm good to go. So, I've pushed through it. I've gotten to a point where I can use my thumbsticks and move around and not get nauseous. So hopefully that's something we can turn off. Mike, any thoughts on Aspire?
Yeah, I haven't been following it too closely because I've had my head in one specific VR game a lot lately. But now that that's
wow, you're into No
out...
Man's Sky that much? Wow.
No, Skyrim with all the mods. What are you talking about?
Yeah. But now that that's out, I'm really looking forward to jumping into some other recent releases, especially over the Thanksgiving break. And so I'm looking forward to that game just to see all the differences with what I'm used to.
Yeah. Pull your head out from development mode. Look, the world has changed.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to the next piece of news.
A lot of news this week.
The Climb is coming soon to the Quest.
What?
I know. It's coming soon.
Wow.
Actually, they have said December 3rd is the release date for the Quest. Who wants to take that one? Ian, have you any thoughts?
Yeah, that's so we saw the video drop onto the internet, and we looked at it really quickly, and it's fun because we were looking at it and our first reaction was, is that Quest gameplay? Because it looked that good, and that's just a good sign that you're looking at the video and go, wow, they actually did a pretty good job with the graphics, putting it down on Quest.
For reference, that is not a question we ever had to ask with the Robo Recall footage.
Yeah.
No offense to Drifter Entertainment, but it's like that game was designed to run on Unreal on a PC. That there's a very big difference visually between those two. But Crytek has apparently done a really good job. But like that footage looks impressive, and I think obviously the caveat here is this is a game where all that's really moving are your hands through the environment. It's a static mountain with a great vista that's pretty static. So, I mean, there's not a whole lot going on. So it's a little easier to maintain that fidelity. I would assume. I have no idea personally, but that's just my assumption on it. But it looks great. Did you play the original, Ian?
Oh, yeah. And I kind of disagree with what you said, but like, just because I so hate the tether on headsets so much and think that cutting that tether will allow me to move around and sort of like maybe reach just a little bit further for one of
Yeah.
those holds.
Or actually jump and try to reach something.
Yeah, I find myself doing that in Pistol Whip on Quest because I have that wireless freedom, and I don't do it as much when I've got a tether, just because I don't feel as safe. I feel like my head's going to get pulled back by the tether.
I can't imagine playing Pistol Whip with a tether. Having played it on Quest, very limited playing it on Quest, but I just think that would drive me insane. Same with like Beat Saber or anything because I kind of started on the Quest, and now that I'm going back to having a tether, it's interesting to do the reverse now that I've been trying.
Yeah, that's especially how Vader Immortal is for me. The lightsaber dojo, like
yeah,
I spend so
that's
much.
360, so like
yeah,
mm.
yeah, Super Hot as well is another good one. That I mean, when playing that now on Quest, like I just can't even.
Yeah, that's another one I
fathom.
played on Quest.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even think about trying that with a cable. I basically barrel roll into walls and stuff, and I'm playing that. My housemate's like, "What are you doing?" And I actually have a marker on my touch controller because I just like went to slam someone's head and didn't realize the barrier was so close, and there was a big metal heater. And I just went slamming into it.
Awesome.
Made a nice noise. I still got the guy, so I mean, I don't mind. Probably still works well.
Worth it.
Back when
Yeah.
when the Quest came out, we did a bunch of launch live streams where I was streaming myself from my living room, running around, and people on chat would like literally donate money asking me to do things. Like I did a barrel
Run into
roll
a
while
wall.
playing paintball in Rec Room. Like I rolled on the ground. I did a handstand while doing like a meditation on a beach.
Honestly, that was highlight of the year for me to see that work on first attempt. Is David going upside down in his living room, and you see the shot in VR of like he's in the grass, upside down, and it worked.
I played like 10 waves of Space Pirate Trainer lying on my back, with just rolling back and forth to dodge bullets.
It's like, how far can I push this system?
Yeah.
Have you seen the video of someone doing like they went outside and did an actual like backflip in the air with a Quest on?
Yeah.
Fun fact, back in like 2016, using the original TP cast, we were like one of the first people to do that in our green screen studio. We had someone do a backflip wearing what was it? I think it was the Vive on the TP cast. He was doing Space Pirate Trainer, and he was dodging bullets by flipping and stuff.
Wow.
And we did mixed reality, so you could see him do it like inside the game. It was pretty cool.
There you go.
Interesting. All right. Well, I guess that's enough about the climb until it comes out and we can see more about that. Let's move on to the next section of the show. And this is called Release of the Week. And this is where we talk about what we're playing this week. Let's start. Hey, Mike, let's start over here with you. I never start with the guest. Mike, what are you playing this week?
Well, I think in the last week, my favorite game has to be Stormland.
Ooh,
what's that?
What's that one?
Tell us about
Stormland.
What's that?
So Stormland is Insomniac's fourth VR game. And we sort of took everything that we wanted to do on the previous ones and like bundled it together in this big elaborate package that gosh, I don't even know where to start. So I guess when we started on Stormland, the two things we really wanted to do was bring really open, free traversal to VR. This was a few years ago when maybe at the apex of people's complaints about too much teleporting mechanics and like locomotion's too limited, and that sort of makes them all feel the same and not quite as like compelling and deep as other games they're used to. And the second big thing was just something that's deep, complex, compelling, and has a design that is unique and sort of stands on its own legs without sort of like being built around a singular like VR mechanic. So given those two like initial goals, we sort of like built up a game around it that has these three sort of foundational elements. One is combat, where you are sort of like grabbing guns and utilities and using some devices built into your body to fight a bunch of enemies. 2 is exploration, where you I should start. 2 is traversal, where you can grab onto the world or like fly through, like guided by your hands, or just sort of like walk and turn as a baseline. And then 3, use those traversal abilities and use those combat abilities to navigate this sort of like large, exotic, diverse world, trying to find things and sort of uncover secrets and lore and see what this weird place is all about. So yeah, to recap, Stormland is a game about being able to go wherever you want, having this vast playground in front of you, seeing some interesting looking spot in the distance, getting there using the motion of your hands sort of quickly with free agency, finding things along the way, fighting things along the way that are trying to stop you from getting there, and giving you sort of rich enough systems to where you want to come back to that and you can sort of like keep playing it and you'll always find new stuff and encounter unique challenges.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing your one-on-one with David at the end of the show to get more in depth with your game. It's always cool to have developers come on and talk about their games. They're always really passionate. I'm going to challenge you here. Have you played anything else this week, or have you only been heads down on Stormland?
I have been only heads down on Stormland, to be honest, for a while.
We can forgive you. Yeah, that's understandable.
Yeah. I mean, the closest anything else has come is Link's Awakening, because I can play that when my kids are around. I can't play anything in my headset when my kids are around.
My man.
Yeah.
Right here.
Mr. Zelda over here. Yeah.
We're gonna talk about Zelda.
That is the
whole
nicest
interview
thing
now.
someone's ever said to me here.
Mr. Zelda.
Yeah, it's the nicest compliment I've ever received.
I mean,
so there's commentary. What do we have from the?
There's a lot of Stormland love. People going, Stormland ! Stormland looks incredible, just so good. And then someone said, I want Stormland on PSVR. Someone else said, it's so immersive. There isn't even a start menu. You launch the game, and you're just there where you last were. Which is
I love that.
Cool. I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
It actually reminds me of the whenever you first begin the original Infamous game on PS3, the start menu is just like a little picturesque park and games where you get to into the experience as quickly as possible. And for like Asgard's Wrath, I love, but one of my issues with that game are the loading screens. And whenever you first put it on, when you put on the headset, no matter how many times you played it, you have to calibrate and T-pose and click the sticks and then load your game. And it takes like a solid minute or two just to get into the game. And so I think anything that can lessen friction is great, and Stormland's a good example of that.
Yeah, I had that last night. I had tried No Man's Sky for the first time.
Oh,
geez, it was cool once I got into it, but man, getting into it there was that kind of extended star sequence, and I was like, what's happening? Is this just a loading screen? Then I figured out it kind of was, and like there was just a lot of distance, and also the menu kind of wasn't like a VR menu at start. It was like just a screen. I was like, is this working properly? There's a lot of friction.
To No Man's Sky credit, though, once you do get in, they hide the loading very well. You don't ever see a traditional loading screen, which is kind of neat. Yeah.
Which is cool because you can just take off, right, and then just like fly somewhere, and it's all kind of hidden. Which is once you get in, it was cool. But starting off, I definitely felt some of that. I was like, I just kind of want to get in. Where's the shit? But
there are a few things worse than a loading screen in VR, because it's just you feel trapped. Like you literally can't do anything. Take my headset off and check my phone.
Except take the headset off.
Yeah. That's why that's the one thing that I will continually say I love about the Vive Cosmos is being able to flip that visor up. which is pretty nice.
Yeah.
That's about all I've got to say, though.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of this. I think more and more as time goes on, we're sort of realizing the value of getting rid of that initial friction. I mean, like you've seen a trend in the developers of platform holders trying to smooth those out and improve them, just because I think those were undervalued for a really long time, and we sort of built up all this baggage about like things that we had to do up front, whether that's like like legal screens or like preloading or letting you select your mode. Like I think that this is going to be even more important to the Quest generation, where like more than ever, people are going to feel that friction of having to wait and load if that is a thing in a game. So I think Stormland's approach is kind of forward looking, and when you see like I think the best Quest games, they'll do something very similar to where you just want to like be in the game playing as soon as it starts. Not just because like that's what you want more than ever because you're wearing a headset, but I think it also like demos well. Like you want that same sort of experience for anybody you want to hand a headset to. You don't want them to have to configure their character or recalibrate or go through a bunch of settings. You just want it to work right away.
Yeah,
that's part of why the Quest works, right? Because you can just give it to someone and there's such little friction. You can just kind of go, here it is, and they put it on, and that's that. And you don't kind of have that same. You get much more of that friction when you're using a traditional PC VR headset. Yeah.
So were there any other releases that we want to talk about this week?
I want to mention the Under Presents. So that's from Tender Claws. That's the maker of virtual reality. It just arrived on Quest. Given the way that Facebook is curating stuff on Quest, that means there isn't a lot of experimental things. So there's a lot of polish applied to everything that's on Quest, and there's a lot of polish applied to this app, to the Under Presents. But it's the most unusual, unexpected, and I have to use the word experimental because it's so different than anything else you will find in VR. So it's live performance, scripted performance. There's time looping where you can sort of replay a part from a different perspective. I need to dive into it more. I need to spend more time with it, and just want to call that out there from Tender Claws. It's one of the most unusual and intriguing things you'll find in VR right now.
I was already when I wrote about it the other day, I was already pretty keen on it because after writing, I was like, this sounds really cool. Then I was kind of browsing Reddit last night before I was going to sleep, and some people who had checked it out were like, I can't tell what's real and what's not here. Like it's really blending the kind of what's a live performance, because I think sometimes there's like live performance, sometimes it might be a recording, sometimes it might be like an NPC and you can't really tell. And they're like, it's so weird to be in this. It changes how you interact with everything because you can't tell what's kind of happening live or what might be recorded or so I think that's a really cool thing to play around with.
And the developers are playing with themes of death, life, existence, just very, very deep, straight to the core of where VR sits for us as people, and how we exist relative to this technology. And they pushed that so far with virtual reality, and then took their time to develop this new one. And you're not going to find something that kind of deals with those issues as deeply as this project.
Very cool. All right. Any comments there, Harry?
We've got someone saying Under Presents is a very interesting game / experience. Still haven't figured out what it's all about, but I love it so far, which that sounds about right. Sounds about right. And then to go back a bit earlier, someone was saying back to No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky button mappings aren't that intuitive when you're flying and such. I found you get used to it, but it takes a while. That's what I found.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those games where I haven't played it in about 3 months since I did the review. I haven't had time, and I'm gonna have to relearn everything when I go back.
It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of good VR, you don't have to think about the buttons. You don't have to think about anything. It just feels natural and intuitive. And No Man's Sky is the exact opposite, where I have to literally memorize, okay, when I'm on foot, this button does this. When I'm in a car, it does this. When I'm in my ship, it does this. Okay, but that button switches to rockets. No, I want to switch to laser. Hang on, let me look up the controls. Oh, wait, Steam VR doesn't have the right button mapping. I don't know what to do. I'm gonna.
And now you're dead. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely a big topic of debate as we were going through Stormland development, where you've got all these like buttons and sticks and things that you have, and the temptation is to just like put a new function on a button because it's there, but they're not intuitive to learn. Like it takes a mental mapping to go through a controller button, and ultimately we tried to scrub all that stuff out so that everything you could interact with was an affordance. Just like, here's where your hand goes, and it's either a handle or a press or a push or something like that. Just because
Yeah,
it
like
made
one of my
everything
favorite
super
things.
intuitive.
One of my favorite things you guys did is, like instead of pushing a button to pull up the map, you just do this, and the map
Yep.
appears here as like an orb. It's so cool. Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, let's move on to the hot topic of the week. So this is going to be a good one. I'm really excited about this because it's Oculus Link, and Harry is sitting right here using Oculus Link.
Who would have known? Yeah.
Yes, and
Here I am.
our community download this week. Why don't you give us some of the rundown from the community download?
I think the
So-
topic the topic was, do you think Oculus Link makes the Quest the only headset truly worth buying
Right now.
right now?
Right
now.
Right now.
Yeah.
So some of the comments we've got highlighted here. So we've got Shadow99. So they said the Quest is too front heavy to be comfortable or viable to me.
Yep.
That's feel like it's
Yeah.
I read them all out and we'll go through it. So Scott Arthur said, after trying out Oculus Link on a high-end PC, and as of this current point in time, I can absolutely say that Quest performs so incredibly well through that thin little USB 3 cable that it almost seems like magic. For only being a beta, I can hardly believe it works as well. It pretty much eliminates the need for any other headset right now. Quest can do it all. I have not yet tried it with Steam VR, but I've heard it works. It does. So I'll reserve final judgment until then and the official Link 1.0 release. But for an early release, it has me very impressed. And last comment. So just got myself a 9-pound USB-C to USB 3 cable for Amazon and tested the new Oculus Link beta on my Quest to PC. And by Jezza, it works a treat. Amazing picture quality, in my honest opinion, better than the Index, which I am about to now return, and very responsive.
Ooh.
What a time to be. Oh wait,
Fighting words.
you mean this isn't real? Recommended. Yeah, so I think that's a good mix of comments because you got people who are very. I think overall, especially considering it's a beta, it works incredibly well. Like problems I've had with it aside, which I can't tell whether I'm pretty sure they're on my end, but it's hard to tell whether they're my end or maybe it's some or a combination of both. But when it's working, it works incredibly well. I think the first comment about it being too front heavy / comfortable has some merit to it.
Yeah, I know
I
there's a
think.
lot of people that just the Quest is just not comfortable. Period. I
Yeah.
think Tatiana here at Upload is definitely one of
Yeah.
those people. And the weird thing about VR is it's like everyone's head is so different. It's like how do you make a headset that's comfortable for everyone? Because for me, I would say the Quest is like it's extremely comfortable. I like it a lot. It's way more comfortable than the Rift or the Vive, for me personally.
But you don't get sick in VR.
Correct. Yeah.
That's a good point.
That's a big difference.
Yeah.
So-
Because
so
it's
I-
so much worse when you can get sick.
I walk into our I guess I'll just call it a computer room, and my children are sitting there, and the Rift S is attached to one of these computers, and I said, "Hey, Oculus Link is out now. We can plug the Quest into the PC, and it'll run like a tethered, and then you can play all of the PC VR games." And my 14-year-old daughter, she says, "No thanks. The Rift S is way more comfortable." And then she says, "Why doesn't the Quest have the strap like the Rift S does?" And I just looked at her and I said, I don't know. I don't know.
So they didn't
what
want
a
to
lot to
license it
unpack.
from Lenovo for two
Yeah.
headsets.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
That's
the
the short
reason.
answer.
And
Yeah.
remember that there's a lot of intricacies there, but the Halo strap on the Lenovo headset is from the PSVR system. So PSVR innovated that strap system. That's why one of the reasons PSVR is so darn comfortable is because of that Halo strap. And then there was some kind of an agreement between Lenovo and Sony to license that technology. And then Facebook
And now
partnered with Lenovo to build the Rift S. And all these headsets get developed in a very long cycle prior to them actually shipping. And there's differences like the lack of IPD adjustment. I'm wearing a Rift S right now, and I would prefer to wear a Quest because of the IPD adjustment. That's a big thing for me because of the way my particular face is shaped. And every different person has a different sort of reaction to the different comfort factors of these devices.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Mike, do you have any thoughts on the Oculus Link?
Yeah, definitely. So when the Link was first announced, the team at Insomniac pretty much like rejoiced because we want as many people to be able to play our game as possible. This not only expands it in the short term, but I think the Quest has a bright future, and it's nice to know that anything you develop for the Rift basically has access to that audience going forward. So we were really excited to see it announced. And luckily, when it was announced at OC6, one of the titles they used to demonstrate it working was our old Stormland single player demo. So then that sort of washed away any doubts about how hard it was going to be to get the thing ported over and get it working, because we didn't need to do a thing, and we could literally just like play it and be like, oh, well, we're sold. Like, yeah, sign me up.
Yeah. Well, that's like now I can play Stormland. I haven't tried it yet, but that's something I can do now, which is super cool because it's not. And I think the other thing about like I get the people that are like, well, a lot of people who have Quest won't necessarily have like a PC that can run Link, right? Because people who are buying Quests don't necessarily have that. That's kind of the draw card of the Quest in some ways. But I think the thing to remember is if you do have a gaming PC like I do, all of a sudden it's like I've been gifted almost a whole new headset, like just suddenly out of nowhere. And it was I kind of knew that I'm not that I knew it might happen, but I knew there was a chance. Like people had kind of talked about it, wondered whether it was going to happen. But then I remember when they announced that, it was like, wow, it's actually happening. And then just the other day when I finally got it working, plugging that in, I was like, far out. Now I can literally play so many more games. It's not at the expense of anything. Like it's been given for free. It's this huge update that I've now got, and I can play. There's a whole huge library of things I can play. It's like one day I didn't have it, now I do, and all I needed was a cord. I think from that perspective, from like a consumer perspective, it's quite incredible.
Let's talk about that cord though, because
the cord.
not all cords are equal. Okay,
as I've been learning.
Yeah. So what cord did you end up getting?
So there's the one that we had on the site that was the recommended one. Now that's not available in Australia in the length that we were recommending. What was the length 3 meters or whatever that is in feet?
10 feet.
10 feet. Yeah.
Yeah. So 10 feet. So I think I've got a 1.8 meter. So I think 6 foot version, which sounds really short, but it sounds really short, but I've got a port at the very front of my computer. So it's basically at the front of my desk. Works for stuff like this. If I kind of turn my chair around, I can still, like I was playing No Man's Sky yesterday, standing up, sitting down, it still worked fine. I didn't really have any, it was a little bit short, but it wasn't too bad. But it's basically the shorter version of that one. I have tried various other combinations of things, and the results have been overall bad. None of them have worked, but it's kind of very complicated as to what works and what doesn't. And like, there's so many things I've quickly learned, as our producer who's behind the camera, Heaney, has been telling me, USB 3 is a lie. Not everything works to that specification. And so there's like, for example, I've got like a USB-C to USB 3 adapter that I know works, that I can plug into the side of my Quest. But then I got a USB 3 cable that was very long, and that does not work. It is not actually USB 3, even though it looks like one and says it is not. And so I plug it in and it just doesn't work.
I want to say people should be very careful when purchasing their cables, verifying that it meets, it's the actual thing that they're advertising on the website. We put up that recommended cable, and that thing sold out very fast. And now the listing goes to other Amazon listings besides the one that we confirmed as working.
Does it go to the shorter version of the same cable? Is that what it is? I can't
Last
remember.
night when I checked it, the 10 feet version page was actually back up.
There we go.
But it's back ordered to December now.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, right. But it does. I think it did go to the like shorter version, which I think is the one I've got. So, but that's no good if you. My situation is very specific in that it works with a short cable. But
so I'm curious.
I think that cable, though, to be clear, is available on eBay and Groupon as well. Some people have reported they bought it elsewhere, and it does work. So we have the actual product number in our article, so you can make sure you're getting the exact right one.
You can double check it's the exact one.
I'm curious though, does the cable that the Quest comes with?
No.
Nope.
No, it doesn't work.
With as long as
Because
it is, and as
it's really
perfect as
frustrating
that would
because
be
it's
to
perfect because
yeah.
and that cable, like all Link stuff aside, that is my favorite cable I own in my house because it is so long. It now works with my phone. I can walk around my whole room with that thing plugged in. I never run out of room for just on my phone alone, right? Like I love that cable. It's so long, but no, because that cable is a USB 2.0, or 2.0 cable. So it doesn't work at all. No, you could, because what happens essentially if you plug anything USB 2.0 in, the Oculus app recognizes it and it goes like Quest is connected, but it needs to be 3.0. So that's essentially what would happen. Doesn't work.
Lovely.
No.
Well, so much for
Yeah.
that concept then. All right.
Yeah.
I'll have to go find myself a cable, go down to the local Radio Shack.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, Radio Shack.
Yeah. Rip.
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments on Quest?
I mean,
and the Link.
If you don't need the Link, if you don't need all those PC games, maybe wait around for the official cable. If you've got the money for that more expensive cable, and
yeah,
It is
you
going
don't
to
really
be
need it.
$80 to be clear.
it is very expensive. Yeah,
Literally 7 times the price, but it is going to be longer too, and it should be way higher quality.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, that's a very. I get why it's so expensive. I do, because it's very high quality. It's like an optical cable, super thin, all of that stuff. That being said, that is a very expensive cable. Like
Yeah.
that's more than any game, and that's
But-
not even counting. Then you're gonna have to buy games to play with.
but think
But
about
it's
that.
premium.
But think about that,
Eh.
Harry. Like you said, that cable is your favorite cable. You're going to get one that's just as long or longer, and it's also
Yeah, but-
USB 3,
yeah,
so it'll do more
yeah.
things than the cable you got with your Quest.
Yeah, but I love the cable that came with my Quest because it came with my Quest. I didn't pay I wouldn't pay $80 for that cable. I mean, I get it because it's us. All this being said, I will still buy the cable despite how expensive it is. But
Hypocrite.
I don't know.
You're a
But,
big
yeah,
phony.
Look,
You're a
buy
big
all the
phony.
cables.
Nah,
Take off
look,
that
no.
leather jacket. You're not cool.
Yeah.
Look, I don't know. I just think I get where the cost is coming from, but that's super expensive. And also, if let's say 6 months down the line, I mean, okay, the cable is not that far off. Probably, do we have it? It's next or late this year, right? So
Yeah, it's gonna
but in
start
limited
shipping this
quantities
year.
in certain places.
limited quantities. So that doesn't, I think, sound particularly good for like wide availability. I have a feeling it might sell out very quickly. But assuming in a couple months' time you can get the official cable, it's not in limited quantities anymore. Surely by then we'll know what cables do and don't work, and there will be some other similar but much cheaper, equally as long cable. And at that point, you kind of go, well, if it's performing the same, which it should be able to, I think realistically, and you can find some somewhat light kind of option and just route it correctly for the same length, then I don't know why you would recommend the really expensive cable if the performance is the same.
Because
And I mean,
it might
the performance.
have the Oculus logo on it.
That's
hey,
true.
There you
That's
go.
true.
No,
I do love an
the
Oculus
Facebook logo.
Sorry.
Yeah.
the-
I also
yeah,
wouldn't
the-
underestimate Oculus's ability to discount the price, because I mean they
Hmm.
they have done a good job, I think, of adjusting quickly to what the market will tolerate. And this
Well,
is
I'll
it's
tell you right
freshly
now,
announced.
What if they bundled like a
That's-
game or
but-
two with it? That would
Oh,
be, yeah.
That's not what I was going to say. What I was going to say is Oculus needs to just put that cable in the Quest box moving forward.
Well, wait a
mean,
second.
That would be nice.
I kind of agree, but you have to respect Facebook's efforts to ship the lowest cost possible, best experience they can possibly put into a box. So, I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility that we see like a Quest Pro next year or something that ships with the USB 3 cord out of the
Yeah.
box, because you
Yeah.
don't want to suddenly raise the price of this hardware.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
to give some people an optional feature that not everyone's going to use.
I get it. So next year, they'll put out the Quest Pro, now in 6 beautiful colors, including the Link cable, for the same price.
I definitely feel like perhaps an option down the line, if we're talking
Or
about
the
that,
Quest XR, maybe. Well, it's what it's called.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly, the Quest
Yeah.
XR, or the Quest S. It'd be like the Rift S, but it'd be the Quest S. It'd be the Quest S, and it comes with the cable, so you can also play PC not included, but it comes with the cable, so you can play PC VR. I do feel like that's an option down the line. Is that there's the normal Quest and there's the Quest that comes with the cable, so that
Yeah.
it's a bit more, but maybe a little discounted price altogether. I feel like that would
Well,
work.
I think there's a lot still to be said about Quest Link, and it is still in beta, or Oculus Link for the Quest. I think that as time goes on, we're going to see some more development, and some of the stuff that we're talking about right now might actually happen. Who knows? Before we get into our interview, I want to make sure that we take some time to talk about some of the stuff that's going on at uploadvr.com, some of the highlights of things that are coming out. Hey, David, can you give us a few things that are happening?
You got it, bro. If you're listening on the podcast, that's awkward, but I pointed with my hand, so it was it was a cool moment where it was.
You don't get the hand translations.
Yeah. So tomorrow we have the next episode of the VR Culture Show, which is from I was going to say Zamie, but Jamie and Zena. They do a video show where they go through a lot of the non-gaming things happening in VR. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what this week's episode is about. It's like a monthly show they do every now and then. They did one on a film festival not too long ago, and I thought it was the VR Awards, right? That's what this episode is about. Yeah, they went to the VR Awards and they filmed and stuff. So that's going to be tomorrow. Not tomorrow. Friday.
Actually, it's Friday.
Yes, Friday.
They moved it because everything had to move because of Valve. Yeah, so it's
Valve.
Friday.
Valve just...
But tomorrow we're going to do another episode of this with Jamie here instead of me, so it's slightly downgraded, but he will be here instead. And you guys are going to talk about Half-Life Alyx, which is coming out hopefully soon. We don't know. Valve is going to tell us about it, and
we'll know tomorrow maybe.
Yeah, have a reaction show right after the announcement. So you can tune into that here on our YouTube. And next week, actually on Wednesday before American Thanksgiving, we will have our holiday VR showcase, which is a lot like the E3 VR showcase, but it's not attached to E3. Instead, we're doing our own thing. We're going to have a bunch of announcements, some new game footage. I think we have some new game reveals that we're going to be showing, a gameplay for some new games. It's not going to have quite as big of the announcements as our E3 show because it's not attached to E3, obviously, but it does have a lot of great some AAA content, some indie content. It's shaping up to be a really good show. So that's next week on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific. You can see that here on our YouTube. And I'm probably missing something. I know Jamie just put out a video here on our YouTube going through who Alyx is from Half-Life, which we talked about earlier. But yeah, so that's the cool things that we're doing here at Upload.
What I'm hearing here, David, is that if I haven't been to Upload VR's YouTube channel in a while, right now would probably be a pretty good time to get reacquainted with it. So
I would say so,
definitely go check out on YouTube the Upload VR channel because great stuff. Just fantastic content always being poured into that. I'm very excited about the showcase. That's one of those videos that you definitely want to have your coffee and your your scones or whatever and be sitting at your computer waiting to watch. It's going to be a fantastic show. All right. Any more last minute comments here before we go over to our interview, Harry?
No, I think there's most of it. Some people were just commenting on the avatars and how expressive the body language is, which, very true. We're all very expressive people. And I think some people are saying that, I think this is in relation to the link cord, which I said, I think it's a trick. It's not out yet because they're hoping it will be wireless at that time. Carmack's last gift to us. I mean, he did kind of comment on the wireless thing, didn't he? I think he's kind of said it's not there yet, or like it's potentially,
Valve has also made a comment about wireless too, right? Wasn't that one of the things that they said was that they're looking into wireless stuff too
for Index?
Yeah.
So,
well, fantastic. All right. Well, let's wrap up this part of the show and we'll move on to the interview segment. So stay tuned. Give us some time to switch seats, and thanks for watching.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for sticking around for the one-on-one interview segment of the Upload VR download here on our YouTube channel and on podcast platforms around the world. My name is David Jagno. Once again, I am from Upload VR, and I'm joined by Mike Daly from Insomniac Games. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I've been very excited these past few days, and for good reason.
Yeah, so I guess you're a big fan of VR games, and you guys have worked on a couple, a
Yep.
handful, more than most developers. I would even say.
Yeah.
Obviously, Stormland recently came out. We gave it 4 out of 5 in our review. We're a big fan of the game. We really enjoyed playing it. Co-op was a blast. I think we streamed it shortly after it came out. We're going to do some more streams as well. Really like it. I guess for you, I would be most interested in hearing about sort of Insomniac has been involved in VR since way before the Rift even came out. You guys were working on games like The Unspoken, Edge of Nowhere, Feral Rights, so a lot of VR experience. For you in particular, can you kind of just tell us a little bit about your history in game development and kind of where you got started and what brought you to VR?
Yeah. Sure. I suppose in the beginning, I was like 14 and got to go to like a summer camp that was teaching programming. I'd always loved games, but it wasn't until this like really really simplistic class that sort of the curtain was peeled back on what computers could do or just how
Mm,
they worked really.
yeah.
And I really like fell in love with it and basically like went home and started trying to figure out how to make my own games. It was kind of like a caveman learning that you could bang two rocks together, and that's
Yeah.
more or less what I was doing for like the next 10 years.
Oh wow.
Just like
Yeah.
really crude stuff. But I continued basically. I like chased that passion through high school and through college. Got lucky through some connections and started working in the game industry, doing um, exporter tools and then later like engine development as for like a middleware game engine. So it was used in a lot of different games, and I do like support for those studios and expand, make sure that our tool chain sort of worked with what they needed to do,
Oh,
optimized
okay.
the
Okay.
engine for that sort of stuff. That taught me really good like engineering discipline, but it never really like satisfied me very creatively. So my free time, I kept doing like game jams and hobby projects and just like all sorts of like fun stuff. So eventually that sort of drove me to jump into like developing a game proper. So I became a gameplay programmer. Um, Started working on some fun stuff like procedural generation tools, and started working on weapons programming, which was a real which was super fun. So a few years later, I was looking to move back to my home state of North Carolina, and some of my old colleagues from the engine company, I reached out to them. Coincidentally, they were about to open a gameplay programmer position, so I was like, "Yes, please, I'll take it." So that's how I got started in Insomniac.
Well, there you go, folks. That's how you get a job in the game industry. You just say, "Yep, I'll take it.
Yes, exactly.
One, please. One job, please."
Yep. So I worked for a few years on various Ratchet and Clank titles. So I was doing programming on
Okay.
Full Frontal Assault and Nexus for the PS3. Then I transitioned departments and was the lead designer on Ratchet and Clank for PS4. Um, since Ratchet and Clank, that was around the time we were talking with Oculus about putting together Rift launch titles, and so um, I went from Ratchet to Edge of Nowhere, which was still very early. And at the time, with the platform not developed yet and the hardware not out yet, there was a lot of unknowns and sort of the sky was the limit too. So um, we had a lot to figure out. And the game eventually sort of like formed into Edge of Nowhere from just like ideas all over the place. That game was a lot of fun to work on, but it was at a time where like we were still trying to feel out questions like does everything need to be in first person? How far can you go to support like traditional games?
Real quick, I just want to say, someone in the chat is saying that we're not taking questions. I am going to read some of these questions people have, but I'm just letting you finish your origin story here. But I do have chat pulled up on a Oculus Dash window. So I'll read some of these questions in just a little bit.
All right.
Yeah, so Edge of
Cool.
Nowhere, that was a gamepad only Rift game. That
Yeah.
wasn't a launch title though, right? It came out after.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
So we were targeting like a launch window. And as that time was approaching, we felt that we would be able to produce the best game by launching, I guess it was the following April. So we were about like 5 months out. And at the time, through most of the development, there was no concept of like touch controllers. So we knew we were going to be developing gamepad from the beginning.
Right.
And part of the whole like theory was, what does like a traditional action game look like in VR? And that's why we made a game where you sort of like follow this avatar and have, sort of running and jumping and climbing controls just to see if it could be done. There was no real examples to follow when we got started on it. So it felt like we were really like blazing new territory, which was a lot of fun. But kind of anxiety inducing, but it's the sort of adventure you sign up for.
And for those unfamiliar, Edge of Nowhere, that to me, I kind of describe it as sort of Tomb Raider meets Lovecraft sort of type of a game. It's action adventure, third person. A lot of climbing, a lot of exploration, a lot of there's some stealth moments in there. And I think one thing in particular that stands out to me in my recollection of it is even though it's a third person game, there's still a great sense of presence because of how large the world feels and the sense of scale that you guys use. I know there's that one particular moment on the bridge with the giant monster, and you have to really crane your neck up to look. That was one of my first VR experiences where I felt small and insignificant. And I think that was something you guys did really well with that one. And that's those are some philosophies that are carried through into Stormland as well. And
Yeah, absolutely. We made a lot of discoveries in Edge of Nowhere, both about stuff that worked well, like putting you in this awesome setting where you could get a sense of scale and letting you move through it, but also things that don't work, like trying to get you to like pay attention to like this character or thing that's happening when you're surrounded by this
I remember
awesome,
like
beautiful vista.
cutscenes would sort of take control of the camera away from you a little bit, and that was a little jarring. And there was that intro moment where you're actually in first person on the plane, and that was a little trippy. Then going into third person after that, so some lessons to be learned. That was early days for VR for sure.
Yeah, and there were a lot of discoveries that didn't end up shipping in the game that didn't that didn't work too well either. So we really like got our feet wet, learned a lot of lessons, and as it became time to like produce and finish the game, there were a lot more ideas that we were having and we already had that we didn't really, it didn't make sense to start prototyping and to build off of them at that point, because it's, we were on a course to finish and give people this cool game to play. So
And
as we were wrapping up, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say that I don't want us to get too bogged down talking about your previous game. So I mean, obviously you worked on Edge of Nowhere, and Insomniac's other work, obviously is Unspoken, which is that Magic dueling game. It was a big esport for a while. Feral Rights, which was like a top-down third-person action game. But a Stormland, that's the new one. That's the big new one, and that one has co-op, and it has amazing traversal mechanics that are just so fast and freeing, but you somehow seem to have avoided a lot of the motion sickness that a lot of other games fall victim to. Well, one of the questions we have here is if you could kind of talk a little bit about how you were able to do that traversal and make it comfortable. I mean, can you give any insights into how that was accomplished?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the collection of a lot of little things, but some of those little things that jump out to me are a lot of our core traversal moves are based off of hand motion rather than like stick motion. So, climbing is sort of the main one, and we've seen a lot of like climbing in games by now. There's a few things we found that work well for it. One is that we've got sort of this distance tether that lets you climb away from the wall by a few feet. That's nice
Right,
because
right.
you get a better sense for your surroundings and you can look around. The motion is a little bit slower, and so you're insulated from any sort of like frame jerkiness or like, tracking issues. Um,
Yeah, I know for
and
me in other VR games a lot, if I'm climbing something, it can be frustrating because I won't be looking at my
Mhm.
hand and I go to grab where I think the rock is or whatever. But since it's not real life, I don't have the haptics of feeling the texture of the wall and knowing where my hand is in space. I miss it by like an inch and then I go to pull and I look back and I'm falling. And it's
yeah,
like, well, that's annoying and that's kind of frustrating. But you guys solve that by, like you said, the tether, your hand can be like this far away and you push grip and then it sort of shoots a little beam to the wall to create the, illusion of you grabbing it. So I think that was a good solution.
yeah, like reliability or meeting players' expectations is definitely like a central theme in designing a game for comfort. And being able to tether when you expect under many different conditions is definitely part of that, because you don't want players to suddenly start falling when they don't expect to. So a
Hmm.
super reliable climbing tethering mechanism that doesn't rely on you having to um, know sort of exactly where the wall is or tell which part of your hand is supposed to be in
And
contact
then
with it or
since you're
whatever.
not directly against the wall, colliding with it, you can fling yourself and you can go up really
Yes.
fast. And that's
Yeah.
so fun to do.
Yeah, and that's one I wish I had some sort of like comfort insight for. But for that, we were just like, okay, well, it makes perfect sense. I want to fling myself or prototyping this, so let's just try it. And then
Uh-huh.
it was one of those like pleasant surprises that it didn't really bother people that much. I mean, in retrospect, I think the theory that guides that is using the motion of your hands to drive your locomotion. That motion has a ripple effect through your body to your head. And so your inner ear, when it's like perfectly stable, is when it's the most sensitive to artificial motion. And when there's this like natural motion sort of rippling through your body, causing it to shift and
Yeah.
move, it sort of dampens it. It's like adding noise to this
And that
signal
that
of
like
of
force
disconnection.
of going like that, people almost move their head a little bit when they do it too. And I think that kind
Exactly.
of helps create that
Yep.
illusion of
Yeah,
yeah,
the
that's
extra like
fascinating.
physical signal sort of masks the artificial acceleration, and that
Ah.
that helps a lot. Or at least that's my theory. I
Yeah, it
wish we
makes
could do
sense.
like
Yeah.
brain scans and stuff to figure out for sure, but it's just guesses even at this point.
One of the other good questions someone had, this is not really a feature question or like a game design question, but are you guys going to have like the ability to do separate save files or cloud saves or anything like that? Is that something on the roadmap? Because I know one person was saying that they want to show the game to someone, but they don't really want them to have to jump into the end game, on their
Mm.
file or anything like that.
Yeah, so we are turning on cloud saves. I don't know exactly when, but it is a feature that we put in the game.
Okay.
The multiple save files, I'm afraid that your option there is more or less like a workaround, which is just like rename your save file, and so you can sort of bounce back between them freely as you
Oh,
want.
just back it up in a different folder and then yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
that's flexible, but there is a little like friction to going to Discord and figuring out where it is
Okay.
located. And
So one of the other questions someone had is they noticed it seemed like some surfaces weren't climbable.
Mhm.
Is that intentional to kind of funnel players to do certain things?
Not exactly. So like, yes, some surfaces are not climbable. We tried to limit those for the purpose of guiding players to the very beginning of the game, because
Okay.
that's the part where um, you hadn't really been given the full palette of tools yet, and needing to get through that palette of tools is super important to being able to process the rest of the world. But outside of that starting area, the only time we use non-climbable surfaces is when being able to climb up there is sort of does more harm than good to the user experience, which
Right.
is rare. But some places you just can kind of get your body tangled up in, or we didn't really like detail out all the way.
Yeah, just some sort of video game illusion, tricks to yeah.
Yeah.
One person wants to know. I don't know how much detail you can go into here, but obviously, Insomniac is now owned by Sony, right? So Sony now owns Insomniac. But so what does that mean for the future of Stormland? Are there any plans for post-launch content? How long? Will you continue cycling the world? Because every Tuesday it resets, and the in-game content is different. Are there DLC plans? What does the future of Stormland look like? Because I'm sure if a person buys the game, they play it, they love it, but then your studio is owned by a different platform holder that's also involved in VR. What does that look like exactly?
Yeah. Well, so we designed the game sort of knowing that we wanted it to be able to sustain itself without us sort of like constantly like pushing it forward. So to that end, the week to week rollover will happen on its own, basically for like 16 weeks. And after 16 weeks, you'll see it go back to the beginning and you can sort of go through the old layouts. We felt that
Okay.
this was sort of a good trade off in both ways because that is so many layouts that you're probably not going to be like, oh my God, it's the exact same thing. Or if you were, you probably felt that feeling just in general throughout the unique layouts that we give you.
Sure. Yeah.
So there is that sort of automatic mechanism that is in place. As far as updates, we're still working on basically like our patches, which include not just sort of like stability and bug fixes, but also a lot of quality things that we really wanted to get in and we didn't really have time for the launch date. So we're still working on that stuff internally. I'm not really in a good position to speculate on like Sony's plans for like the game or the IP, but I will say that Sony owns the Stormland IP now, so that's fully within their roster,
Interesting.
and they can do with that
So does
what they want.
does Sony own the Unspoken, Edge of Nowhere, Feral Rights? So they own all that IP?
Yes, they do. Yep.
Okay. And so theoretically, if they wanted to have you guys make another VR game in the Stormland universe, could they do that, or would they need to get Oculus's permission, or how does that work?
I'm not sure. I think we need to check with our lawyers on that one.
Yeah,
But
fair point. Yeah.
but I mean, even if sort of it required both parties to work together, nothing is impossible. Sony
Sure.
doesn't have exactly the same like nature of relationship they do to like Microsoft or Nintendo, and I mean
True. Yeah.
even
I mean,
within those relationships in
Heavy
these
Rain are on PC now, so I mean,
yeah
yeah.
yeah in those sort of traditional models we have for predicting like platform holder behavior seem to be at least according to the rumors like not holding true as much as they did in the old days, so
Yeah,
who
yeah,
knows.
it's pretty wild. I was playing the new Call of Duty Modern Warfare on my PS4 with my friend on his PC. He was on
Hmm.
mouse and keyboard, crossplay. It was wild, and crossplay has been a thing since VR first came out because Eve Valkyrie has crossplay, Spark has crossplay, Star Trek Bridge Crew has crossplay on PSVR and PC.
Hmm.
So the doors are at least cracked to where there is the potential for that kind of stuff. And I guess a follow up to that would be theoretically, let's say Oculus, wanted you guys to work on DLC for Stormland. Is that something they would need? Do you know if that's something that could happen, or does Sony need to like allow that? Or I don't know if you know the flip side of this arrangement.
Well, that would definitely need to be an arrangement between Sony and Oculus.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's kind of up to them to negotiate, and if they can
Gotcha.
work out something that they feel like is mutually beneficial, I'll be here.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Well, can you say whether or not you are working on anything for PSVR or PSVR 2? Is that something you can comment on at all?
Nope.
Yeah, I figured not, but I had to ask. Yeah,
Yeah,
of course.
worth trying. It's too soon. Too soon.
Um,
Working on Stormland patches.
was Sony involved at all in Stormland? Did they have any input into anything? Because that deal happened while you guys were working on it, right?
Um, not really. I mean, we had a pretty good thing going with our publishers at Oculus.
Okay.
Ironically, there was some overlap between uh, those people and people we used to work with at Sony, so that actually felt really
Yeah.
natural.
Okay.
But especially towards the end cycles when the Sony acquisition happened, we really had the product like figured out, and it was just a matter of execution.
And
So there
I'm just
wasn't really that much room.
I'm gonna throw this out there, and obviously, I'm sure plenty of people at Insomniac have thought of this. This isn't an original idea, but of all the people on the planet that I feel like can make a great Spider-Man VR game, come on, come on. Well, we need it. We need it. The world needs it. Um, let me see. Let's look at some other questions. Kev Gret says you are great at answering questions, and it's a great interview. So everyone appreciates your transparency.
Thank you. That's awesome. I try.
Mike Ward wants to know if there is plans for an Art of Stormland book.
Oh man, that would be cool. If there are plans, those are probably not the sort of plans I've been paying attention to lately. So I don't know, but you can ask Vidi on the Insomniac Discord, and he might be able to give you an answer.
Oh, okay. Paradise Decay, we talked about Half-Life VR a little bit earlier, and Mike chimed in a little bit on that. So if you want to watch the beginning, you can see that. But tomorrow we will have a dedicated show for Half-Life VR. And let's see, any other questions here? Paradise Decay, the same person, has a good one. If you had any important or key advice that you could pass on to a budding new VR developer, what would it be?
Oh man. So
I
would say
on the spot.
Yeah. I think one of the things a lot of new VR developers underestimate is hand presence. Like, in the same way that people were complaining about sort of the prevalence of teleport mechanics a few years ago, I feel like the next gripe that it's going to be harder and harder to get away without doing is sort of like low resolution fixed pose hands in game. So like my random tip would be it's worth the time and budget to have good intuitive, immersive, expressive hands and hand to world interactions. So like, rather than allowing your hands to sort of stay fixed and pass through things or just sort of like be really basic looking, your hands are the heroes of your game. So put a lot of time and attention into making them look good,
That's
to making their poses just right.
Yeah.
And give them context sensitive interactions to anything you think the player might want to interact with. So like, if I wave, it's not quite the same seeing sort of like the rigid default pose as if the game detects a wave and plays, a wave hand gesture or animation. So I would say that's probably one of the things I think that is undervalued currently and is an opportunity to help your game sort of stand out and leave a good first impression on players.
And how does that extend to being relative to like a full body IK? Because with Stormland, obviously you have a fully articulated robot body with arms and all that kind of stuff. Do you feel like that was a crucial thing as well? Because most VR games just have floating hands or forearms. So I mean, because I know IK is difficult to do well in VR, but that's something that you guys obviously felt the need to do. Was that driven from an immersion standpoint, or was that because of co-op you need to have the other person animated anyway?
It was both. So when we sort of set our game's pillars, it had both immersion of being as immersive as we could possibly be and embracing presence. And we wanted to make a game that facilitated co-op. So to us, like many things aligned to make the full body avatar make sense. Like, grabbing things from off your body to be inventory instead of having any sort of like menus or items, like having that sense of presence that also reminded you who you were and what you were doing, giving you that feeling of like, oh my gosh, a part of my body is transforming, like that sort of break in immersion to sell the theme. All that stuff sort of aligned, the feeling of like building attachments onto you. That being said, that was very difficult. It is not. I wouldn't necessarily recommend like a new or budding VR developer take on that challenge because of that difficulty. But I do hope that in the future, figuring out where your bones are in the body based off of where your head and hands are, is a common problem like across the industry. So hopefully a piece of middleware or a platform will solve this problem so that everybody can take advantage of it. That's sort of a best case scenario, because it's not like different games are played by people with different bone structures or anything like that.
That's a good point. Yeah. We have a couple other quick questions here. Chris Richardson is curious to know about the jewelry box on the base camp. All this talk about immersion, but you can't pick it up.
Yeah. Yep. That was a no-no. And we went through and flagged certain things. The tricky thing about the jewelry box was that it was placed there on purpose so that you had something to be curious about early, and then something to scan once you got the scanner, so that you could be like, aha,
Ah,
this
okay. I
mechanic is
did scan
about,
it, so that
yeah,
works. Yeah.
yeah, it's about like learning more about the world, and we wanted it to be conspicuous enough to be obvious. Um,
Okay.
but then we did realize, like, oh, people are gonna want to grab this. We should do something about it. And we filed a bug, and there were too many bugs, and we were just like, well, maybe this is not the most important bug. But there are a few other places in the game where stuff like that
Sure.
slipped through, and it kind of that was one of my pet peeves. So it bugged me that we didn't get to that.
Okay. One of the other interesting ones here is Joe49000 is curious about subtitles in other languages. Is that something that you guys are looking into?
It is not something we're looking into.
Okay.
We sort of made the probably shouldn't throw anybody under the bus for this. So I'll just say
Sure,
that
sure.
English is the only language that the game supports, unfortunately.
Okay. Understandable. It's a heavy resource burden to do something like that. That's not simple. And even in VR it's even more complicated, I would imagine, to do subtitles and stuff. Um Sampler, he answered some comfort questions earlier, so you can watch back at earlier parts of the interview if you want some more insight into comfort. And one other, I guess, well, I'll ask one of these other questions here. This is more of a fun one to end on. Paradise Decay wants to know how many times the development team watched Short Circuit, or Chappie,
Yeah. So those movies were definitely both inspirations. We didn't like
Okay.
hold screenings or anything, but I feel like in my personal childhood, I watched Short Circuit enough to where, like, I don't need to watch it anymore. It's just ingrained.
Yeah.
Johnny Five is in there.
Okay. Yeah. Or are we gonna get a Nintendo crossover with Wally? Can we get that? Or not Wally. I'm sorry. What was his name? Rob.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was the Nintendo one. Wally's Disney. I get my robots confused.
I mean, they both apply. I would say Wally is perhaps more of a direct inspiration in Stormland than
Sure.
Rob,
Yeah.
the robotic operated buddy.
Well, you remember the acronym. I didn't remember what it stood for. Okay.
Yeah, that's getting pretty old school.
Yeah, you know your robot lore. I like it. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us here. And sorry this episode went quite a bit longer than most of our other ones, but we had a lot of good discussions, and it was hard to move on. We had a lot of good talks, and I'm glad you were here to join us, and it was great talking with you again. I know we've spoken several times. Hopefully, we'll get to continue to speak if you continue working on VR stuff. I would love to see where Insomniac goes next. In VR and outside of VR. I finished Spider-Man, finished Ratchet and Clank. I'm a big fan of you guys, so keep up the awesome work. And
Awesome.
thank you for joining us here today. And as you exit, you will receive a courtesy plant. Everyone receives a courtesy plant. And
excellent.
yeah. And so thank you everyone for tuning in. Like we said earlier, Upload VR is going to have a special episode of the VR download again tomorrow, which is a reaction episode where we will discuss Half-Life Alyx, which is the new flagship AAA VR game from Valve. They are detailing it tomorrow at 10 a.m. and immediately afterwards, or hopefully as close to immediately afterwards as we can, we're going to have another episode here in our studio, here on YouTube, and we will put it out as well on podcast platforms if you can't watch it live. But thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you check out uploadvr.com. Check out our other content here on our YouTube channel for all the latest reviews and news. And also on Friday, we're going to have the VR Culture Show, a new episode about the VR Awards here on our YouTube channel. So make sure you check that out. And thank you once again, Mike. It was a pleasure having you, and I am David Jagno, and this is Upload VR on the VR Download. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Do it. All right, bye.